Good evening. This is our Monday evening Metabolic Meal Plan Elimination support call held every Monday from 7 to 8. And we're a group of us that get together to support anyone who's on the journey to create really great health, who needs help maybe with, menu, recipe planning. I think right now with the holiday coming up, this will be a challenge for people to not indulge in the foods that are harmful and damaging to the body. So this is a great place to come and talk about that. We all have experienced it. We've all been through it. We've all had the challenge. I think that for most of us on this call, that very first year of making those dietary or meal plan changes were a real challenge. And I think that as we continue to add new foods and try new things, it begins to be much more doable, and it starts to be more part of our life. So I think that all of us can certainly attest to that and share about our own journey should we need to do that at some point on this call this evening. In the meantime, we also, so that you all know, spend some time on this call talking about educational things such as inflammation, inflammatory foods versus anti-inflammatory foods. We also have done book reviews over the past, and we're doing a book review currently on the Metabolic Plan by Cherniske, and we're doing an interview that we'll be listening to this evening, Chapter 6, with Cherniske, and Angila Stimack is the one who's interviewing him. And I think you'll really enjoy this evening's call. It's all about disease, illness, immunity, and I think that's what a lot of us are sort of like interested in. Let's keep our health keep ourselves healthy, and let's prevent from getting those diseases. And what can we do about that? So we will certainly be talking more about that. But before we do that, I just would like to open the call up at the beginning to see if there's anything anyone here on the call wants to share. Sometimes it's a recipe, an idea. Sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes it's anything else that's related to, your general health and where you're at, and maybe your own personal experiences with anyone that you might have talked with and what you've seen. So I'm going to open this call up to, or even, by the way, even new recipes you might have tried and something you might want to share here. Which reminds me that last week we went to a networking meeting, and while we were there, we brought some foods, and one of the things that I tried was the bean brownie that I had not made, and that was absolutely delicious. We really enjoyed it, and everyone who tried it was impressed with the taste, and I think that that's sort of the message here, if anything at all, that healthy foods that are healthier for us, doesn't have to taste bad. It can taste very good, and we can absolutely love it, and we can learn to prepare it so that others will like it and share it with others as well. Anyone else?
Not only is food during holidays a challenge, but also on a lot of the holidays sometimes puts people in. Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
I think we might have lost Jim, but he'll pop back on.
People sometimes will get overwhelmed with the whole holiday thing and the weather, and get depressed sometimes, and so I think you got to watch what you eat and try to help that depression and get away from the sugars and all that.
No, absolutely. Good point, Larry, because people don't make the connection that sitting, when it's cold, people are in the house and they tend to snack and eat all day long and sit around because they don't want to go out in the cold. And what do you think that they're sitting eating and snacking on? It's generally, junk food, and it's generally comfort foods that we've all, grown to find, that they're comfort, high sugar, high carbohydrate type foods. And those foods are the very foods that cause damage and inflammation, and the very foods that can often affect mood, because we do know that especially people that are gluten intolerant are impacted by mood they become pretty labile with their moods, and it can be connected to a gluten intolerance. So a great point to bring to the call. And if you're not feeling well, from all of the sugars that you're putting into your body, your mood is going to come down as well. I mean, it's certainly definitely connected. Not to even mention that we're not getting the sunlight and we're not getting the vitamin D that we need during the winter months. So certainly making sure that you're taking vitamin D3, I take 5,000 international units a day, is an important part of the winter season and the cold season for sure. So thanks for bringing that up, Larry.
Yeah, also, it's during the holidays, a lot of people drink alcohol, which alcohol has a lot of sugar, and it's also a depressant. So
it is.
Be very aware of that.
Yeah, and you know what, Larry? Most people don't realize they drink alcohol and it gives them a buzz, and they feel better for a little while, just a little while they have their little buzz. But they don't realize that it's a depressant. Alcohol is a depressant, and most people don't make that connection. And so if you're already depressed, why would you go and take something that will make your depression worse? And yet that's done every day. It's done all the time. So you make some great points.
I think one of the helpful things that some people might find, too, is the aspect if you prepare something ahead, even to take to a get-together or a gathering, you'll have something that you can go to as opposed to thinking that you have to sort of indulge in a lot of the other different things that are there, knowing that it's not something you want to do. So if you prepare ahead something you know you can take that you can pick on, then it might be something that's helpful for someone else also.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I, have to tell you that when I first started the first year, I didn't always do that. And that was, some 12 years ago now, 12, 13 years ago. I used to, go to my mom's house thinking that there must be something I'm going to be able to eat here. And I would get there and I'd find that, everything was dairy-based. All the desserts were dairy-based and all the desserts were loaded with sugar. And there was like, corn or something, sweet or gluten and everything. I mean, it was like amazing. I would look around to say, oh, my God, I didn't realize how much of the stuff that we would ingest at holidays. And so it took me that year of kind of, I would say, shock and awareness for me to sort of say, you know what, I need to start bringing stuff for myself. And then I made it a point to, let my mom know I'm going to bring this or I'm going to, if you're okay with that, I'd like to bring either a platter or, dessert or something. And as they understood that I, was restricted with what I ate, that I wanted to bring something I could share with others that might be a little bit more helpful. And it's become part of the culture now with our family. I mean, it's everyone, brings something, but they all know that there's going to be a dessert that's going to have less sugar in it, and a dessert that won't have a lot of dairy, and a dessert that won't have tons of gluten and other stuff that, a lot of us can't have, and that, we'll bring some vegetable or something that other people can share as well at the table. So, I think that's really important for us to understand that as we learn to make different foods, that bringing it with us and sharing it with our family is certainly a great thing to do. And it's a great tradition to start because it trickles down into your family and they start to, see that they can eat differently. They start to like some of this food and they start to ask about the recipes and trying things.
And what would you say to someone, like say someone brings something to a holiday party and you don't want to try it because it's really probably not good for you, and they feel insulted. Well, how come you didn't try it? What would you say to someone like that?
Well, I'm asked that a lot at work, and I'm asked a lot when I go to parties why I don't. And I have said to them, look, these, some of these ingredients in your casserole that I know it doesn't affect you have affected me, and I don't want to be sick, and so I make a conscious choice not to. Now, would I like to indulge in it? Yes, I would, but I don't want to pay the price. And so I choose not to eat those types of foods so I don't pay the price and I don't get sick. So I make it all about me, Larry, because it is about me. It's about managing my health and staying well. And if I do have it, I am going to pay the price. And it's the honest to goodness truth. I don't usually get a lot of negative feedback from that. People, understand, and they will generally say, I get it, I don't get the insult from people. Have you gotten that?
Well, no, not really, but it's always in my mind that someone might say something and I wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah. I think it's important that we have to take care of ourselves. Your relatives, your friends, they're not in charge of your body. We individually are, and we have to make those individual decisions for ourselves. And we don't have to insult anyone. We don't have to hurt anyone. We just need to let them know this is what I need to do for me. It's no different, and I say this a lot with people, it's no different than someone who's an alcoholic who chooses to not drink any longer. Would you be insulted if that alcoholic who was very, very sick from drinking that alcohol, and if that person went back to drinking, it could create a lot more damage from them and even eventually lead to death? I mean, if they said to you, no, I don't want to drink, I don't drink alcohol anymore, I mean, would you understand that? I think we all would on this call, and I don't think any of us would push alcohol on someone that would harm them. And I think it's no different in this case with food, that we have to begin to educate people that foods that are high in sugar, white flour, and other foods that we are intolerant to are very damaging to us. And the only way they're going to learn that is for us to educate them and to let them know so they can honor and respect where we are. And most people will. They totally will. Any of you on the call, how have you all dealt with it, and how has it been accepted by other people?
I was going to say, when somebody will inquire that on my behalf, I'll say I find that I need to do certain things that are important for my system to remain healthy, and there are some things I have to alleviate from my diet, and that's a choice that I have to make personally for myself.
Great. I like that. Very nice.
I think it's an adjustment for everybody because, before we made this choice to eat a healthier diet, we had favorites that everybody in our family used to make. And so they'd make those favorites for you still, and then they would be hurt because they made it specifically for you because they knew you loved it, and now you're not having it anymore. So it's an adjustment for everybody. I think once everybody understands, it's easier and people accept it. But like my sister, for instance, would make meatballs every Christmas. And I absolutely loved her meatballs, but I had to tell her I couldn't eat them anymore. And at first she was hurt, but then I told her about the ingredients that I couldn't eat in them. So the next time she made me a special batch that didn't have those ingredients.
There you go.
So she got it. So, it's an adjustment for everybody.
Yes.
But it works itself out, I think.
It does. And if we never tell them and we never inform them, how are they ever going to know? I mean,
exactly.
do we keep that from them because we're afraid to hurt them? And in the end, it hurts us. But instead, we let them know in a kind, gentle way that this is why I choose to do what I'm doing, and educate them about how to what it is that is you're reactive to, and they'll accommodate. Oh my goodness, so many people go out of their way to to please you. Even restaurants now today more than ever, they go out of their way to make sure that they don't give that person who's sitting at the table any food that might cause a reaction or might harm them, and they will accommodate those needs. When I let them know, they always do. I've never had a problem in any restaurants that I've gone to.
And also have, sometimes I'll post recipes, from gluten-free recipes on Facebook. I'm sure you've seen them. But I'll have a lot of people write to me and say, are you allergic to gluten? And I'll say, no, I'm not allergic to it, but it's not good for you. And then I'm talking. And then they'll say things like, well, unless you have celiac disease, you should be doing gluten-free, and you don't need to be doing it, and this and that. And it's like, I don't understand what these people are so against it for.
Well, they don't understand, and so a better response might be, Larry, that you can say, I am intolerant to gluten. It's created for me problems with my blood sugar, and stomach. I mean, both. So, or you might say something like, I think if you keep the focus on you, that it's so much easier for those people to accept that. They don't see gluten as a problem for themselves. And it's going to have to be something that happens to them before they'll see it. But they certainly, will respect you and honor you if you're talking about yourself and you're saying, I don't do it because I'm intolerant. I don't feel so good when I take it. So I would tend to try to keep the focus on myself as I respond to them.
Good response. Good. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything they want to share before we start listening to Stephen? Okay. Great discussion, you guys. I really enjoyed the discussion. So let's listen to what Angela is asking of Stephen this week. I think you'll enjoy this clip. I re-listened to it, and I thought, wow, I really enjoyed this part. It's so funny how I love Chapter 3, but I like this chapter as well. So it's hard for me to pick just one. There's so much great information in the metabolic plan. So let's go ahead and listen.
Well, welcome to tonight's Ageless Living Call and the 12-week Metabolic Plan Study Group. Tonight is Chapter 6, Illness, Immunity, and Metabolism, and we all want great immune systems. So let's talk.
You hear that okay, Larry?
Yeah, maybe a little louder if you could, but yeah, I can hear it.
Okay, hold on.
Talk about the exercise factor. I thought that was really interesting, the way that exercise affects the immune system.
The interesting thing is everybody, has known for years that people who exercise regularly have fewer infections and recover from illness faster.
Yeah, but why?
But that's the question. Why? And everybody just thought, well, people who exercise, maybe it's not the exercise that improves immunity. Maybe they're just real healthy people anyway, and so they just happen to exercise too. Well, actually, we know now that strenuous exercise, which raises core body temperature, is an immune-stimulating activity. Basically, it's like giving yourself a transient fever every day or 3 times a week.
So, like when you were saying earlier, that if you had a fever from an illness, you don't want to just squash that.
Right.
So exercising gives you this small little fever when you exercise strenuously.
Now, some people say, well, Steve, I'd rather just sit in a hot tub. Will that do the same thing? No. A hot tub will raise the body temperature on the outside of your body, but the germs are on the inside. So to raise core body temperature, you need to exercise enough to actually sweat. Or come close to a sweat. And the interesting thing is some people say, well, I exercise and I don't sweat. And I say, well, you mean you're not exercising right. And it comes down to, again, the variable pace, which we talked about last week, which is whether you're walking, whether you're cycling, whether you're stair-stepping, no matter what you're doing for cardio workout, vary your pace. And you'll be amazed at how quickly you'll sweat.
Okay, so instead of just going semi-fast the whole time, you go slow, semi-fast, really fast.
Exactly.
Okay.
Slow. So you recover. You go as fast as you can without getting exhausted, and then you slow down to a resting or what I call the recovery pace for a couple of minutes, then go back up to a rapid walk or run, depending on your level of aerobic conditioning, and then you do that as long as you can, a couple of minutes at that fast pace, and you go right back down to the recovery pace. If you do that, number one, you'll get more benefit from that exercise, and number two, you'll probably sweat faster.
Okay, so that would create that fever that we're talking about.
Yep.
That little fever. Okay, now here's this pesky iron factor again.
Oh, yeah, and we've talked about, insufficient iron, and that, of course, is an immune factor. If you're a premenopausal woman, chances are that you don't have enough iron unless you consciously use high iron foods and supplement with an iron supplement. And again, we want people to know their iron level. The only way to know your iron level is a serum ferritin, Ferritin. A serum ferritin will give you your iron status, and there's really no other test that your doctor will normally give you that can give you that information. So a serum ferritin helps you out. If you're low in iron, if your ferritin is below 25, your immune system is going to just not be capable. If your serum ferritin is below 25, you're iron deficient. Even if you're not anemic, don't forget you need to be iron deficient for about 3 years before you become anemic. So anemia is no mark of iron status. On the other hand, men and postmenopausal women tend to accumulate iron, and that's just as bad for the immune system as too little. So you want to have a ferritin that's somewhere between 25 and 150. Once you start getting above 150 or 180, it means that you've got too much iron in your system, and that's going to accelerate aging, and it's going to impair immunity.
And so what do you do to get rid of that iron if you have too much?
Well, if it's just a moderate amount of iron, like let's say your ferritin is, 150 to 180, I would just drink aloe vera. There's a malic acid, which is found in aloe vera, and also found in apples and apple juice. Malic acid will help you to bind the iron that's floating around and get rid of it. Garlic and onions, including garlic capsules, can help get rid of excess iron. Beans and fiber in general tend to bind iron in the gastrointestinal tract. And if you have to, you can resort to something called calcium disodium EDTA, but that needs to be done in the direction of a physician. What I want to suggest for anyone with a ferritin over 180 is just give blood.
Yeah, well, everybody needs to give blood if they can.
Every 90 days, I show up at the blood bank, and they love me because I'm O positive, and it keeps my iron level exactly where I want it, which is about 120. Okay.
Now, what about, I wouldn't have thought about lead and mercury in terms of our immune system.
Well, but again, remember, the heavy metals, lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic, all destroy immune-producing tissues. And so it's like someone's bombing the police station. You need to have a sense of whether you have a problem with lead and mercury. And I would say by the time a person is in their 40s, they ought to be knowing what their lead and mercury level is. And that could be measured in two tests. One is a hair test, but the hair test has to be confirmed with a blood test. If you use a hair test and a blood test, and a nutrition-oriented physician will know how to do that, because there's a procedure that you need to follow. But if you go to your nutrition-oriented physician and you say, I want to get a handle on how much lead and mercury I have in my body, the physician will know how to do that. Now, in the meantime, how can you lower these things?
Right.
Again, the malic acid in aloe vera, I think, plays an important role in binding and eliminating toxic metals. I eat a lot of fish. Mm-hmm. Fish is my major protein. I eat very little meat, chicken once in a while, but I eat fish, probably 6 servings of fish per week. Okay. And so you would imagine that I would have very high mercury levels.
Right.
But I don't.
Why not?
Because I drink aloe vera every single day, and I have for years. So I think, again, drinking aloe vera has some very important detoxification capabilities. I also think N-acetylcysteine is very valuable, lipoic acid. Pectin, which is found in apples and citrus fruits, is very valuable. And I've also been eliminating my mercury fillings slowly. I don't want anybody to go running out and have all their mercury fillings taken out all at once, because that'll release more mercury into your body than you could possibly imagine, and that's really bad for you.
Okay, so silver fillings have
have about 30 to 40% mercury. So what you want to do is understand that these fillings that are in your mouth that may be decades old, every time you chew, the friction of that chewing against the mercury filling is releasing some mercury into your body. So over the years, I think I started probably in the mid-1980s, I started having my mercury fillings replaced with gold and or ceramic fillings, and I still have like 2 small silver fillings, but I mean, if you could see what my mouth looked like before.
So it's just going in the right direction. Right. What you're doing. Okay, so the resident infection factor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine a resident infection is an infection that doesn't go away. And the most popular one, and the one that most people know about, is herpes, because we've got 40 million Americans now with resident herpes infections. Now, the immune system, when it's competent, is going to take care of that infection and keep it under control. But we have a flare-up, we have a blister, we have an episode when we're either under stress, or we get a sunburn, or we're not sleeping well. And so it's really clear herpes infection can be a valuable barometer that tells you how you're doing in terms of your immune system. Yeah, are you stressed? Exactly. Now, the other resident infections can be far more serious. Obviously, HIV is far more serious because that is doing a lot more damage on an ongoing basis than herpes does. Herpes really doesn't do a whole lot of damage. It's just a botheration. Now, the HIV, obviously, there's a whole section in the book about that. There is periodontal disease, which I want to mention, is a resident infection, which is common.
Gum disease.
Gum disease.
Okay.
How common is that? Somewhere around 65 to 70% of people over the age of 50 have some form of periodontal disease. And that's serious. That is an ongoing stressor, and it's soaking up massive numbers of immune cells that could be doing a better job elsewhere in your body, like looking for cancer cells, for example. So, and sometimes when I'm lecturing on this, people say, why are you talking about gum disease?
Right.
And I say,
my gums just bleed a little bit when I brush my teeth. What to say?
Yeah, but there's good research showing, and I'm talking about really good research, showing that people with gum disease have a lower longevity. Their longevity is lower than people that don't have gum disease. In other words, it's a factor in longevity. It's a factor in morbidity, that is your tendency to have infections, and it's a factor in mortality, which is your tendency to die.
Wow.
So gum disease is serious. Take steps to take care of that. And obviously the most effective way to do it is with regular checkups with your dentist. And when your dentist says you need to floss, and if you want to get one of those cool little water pick things, what I do is I'll take a water pick and I'll put some hydrogen peroxide in the water pick water, and I'll water pick with hydrogen peroxide maybe once a week. Mm-hmm. Now, that destroys the water pick, but I would much rather replace the water pick once every 2 years than die earlier than I need to.
Yeah, and keeping your immune system strong helps to overcome periodontal disease.
It does. But again, why not get rid of the infection?
Right. Makes sense to me. Okay, cardiovascular disease, major topic.
1 million people died last year from cardiovascular disease, which includes heart disease, stroke, and embolisms. And that is so serious. And I mean, 1 million people. Now, it doesn't mean that those people weren't going to die anyway of some cause, but most people who die of cardiovascular disease die prematurely. In other words, if they didn't have that heart attack, if they didn't have that stroke, they would have been around for a lot longer. And we have to, the whole point of anti-aging is not just, sticking around so we can collect more Social Security checks or watch television. Sticking around means being able to share your wisdom and your love and your experience with other generations, playing with your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. People who die of stroke and heart attacks, very often are taken out in their 50s or their early 60s. I'm almost 56 now, and I have to tell you that when I went back for my latest high school reunion, there was a lot of people who weren't there. Mm-hmm. And what a wake-up call for me.
That's a wake-up call.
Because I always thought, I'm not old.
They are.
They are. But why are they dying of heart disease and stroke, and why are they having heart attacks in their mid-50s? So, again, how do you prevent it? Well, the most important thing that you can do, and we're not going to go through the entire section here on this review, but I want to say that maintaining high levels of antioxidants is your best defense against cardiovascular disease.
Now that is a huge thing, because you just said that maintaining high levels of antioxidants in your blood, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is your best defense against cardiovascular disease.
And that doesn't mean that you
wouldn't think about taking blueberries, which has got a lot of antioxidants in it, or taking green vegetables would make that kind of difference in cardiovascular disease.
It makes a huge difference, Angela. There was a study, and I'm not saying, please don't misunderstand me, I'm not saying that you should ignore high blood pressure or high cholesterol. You should not ignore those factors. But research is showing us that in terms of predicting heart disease, it's far more valuable to look at your antioxidant level than your blood pressure and your cholesterol. In other words, people with low antioxidant levels in their blood will have more heart disease and more strokes than people who have high levels of antioxidants but happen to have high blood pressure and high cholesterol. So what I'm saying is, bottom line, is heart disease is not a cholesterol problem. It's an antioxidant problem, and high cholesterol tends to be an additional factor.
Okay. So going back to some really basic things, fruits and vegetables, high antioxidants.
Well, if you look at the data, the people with the highest intake of fruits and vegetables have 1/3 the cancer and heart disease as people who consume the lowest amount of fruits and vegetables. So it's as plain as can be. Eat more fruits and vegetables, supplement with a comprehensive, high-potency antioxidant. Use your berries and your cherries and your dark fruits, the fruits that have dark blue, purple, and red pigments. Those are going to help you. Vitamin E can be extremely valuable for the cardiovascular system. And so, again, maintaining an intake of vitamin E foods as well as vitamin E supplements can be very, very valuable.
Okay, well, you mentioned cancer, and that's the next big topic in the book. Let's just briefly touch on that. I know we could spend days, but we don't have days.
Well, the thing that I want to do in this overview is to get people to understand where cancer starts. Cancer starts when DNA is damaged, and that damage is not repaired. Unrepaired damage is replicated. In other words, the cell is going to reproduce. If the DNA is damaged, the cell will reproduce that damage, and that ultimately is called a mutation. If that mutation occurs in a quality control gene of a cell, you have cancer. Voila. So it's important that we understand where cancer starts. It starts by damage in the DNA is not detected and repaired, and that damage is reproduced and produces cancer. So you have to say, how do I prevent DNA damage? And the answer is the same. Primarily, you're looking at, number one, avoiding the things that cause DNA damage, and number two, you're looking at ways to reduce the damage with antioxidants, because the damage is being done primarily by free radicals. So a high antioxidant diet, once again, a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, can really be extremely valuable in reducing one's risk. Now, the issues of reducing those things that damage DNA. Where is all this damage coming from?
Yeah, where is all this damage coming from?
Go outside. Go outside and look at the sky. Look at the smog over Denver. It's blue today. But you know and I know, there's sometimes when you're flying into Denver, where we live, there's this brown soup that we're flying into, and it's a lot worse in some cities than it is in others. But the chemicals in smog are actually damaging to our DNA. The chemicals that we eat, the pesticides, the herbicides, the toxins that are on the modern chemicalized food, these are all going to promote DNA damage, especially things like dioxin. Again, we like white things. We like our paper to be white. We like our toilet paper to be white. We like our paper towels to be white. We like our napkins to be white. What makes paper white are chemicals that are releasing dioxin into bleaching chemicals that are leaching into our groundwater and that we ultimately end up consuming. So here's a plea for natural paper products. Get natural brown toilet paper, natural brown paper towels, natural brown napkins, natural brown coffee filters. It's not that difficult. Get away from all this white stuff, and you'll reduce the level of dioxins in the water and in our food supply, and ultimately reduce your risk for cancer.
So real quickly, we've got about 1 minute. But it brings us back in terms of immunity and cancer.
Well, again, if you look at what happens to cells that replicate damage, the fail-safe mechanism here is that the immune system goes along and says, hey, cell, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You got 10 seconds and I'm going to take you out. And literally that's what happens. The immune cell basically announces to the cell that's not functioning correctly that it has a chance to repair itself. And if it doesn't
straighten up and fly right.
Exactly. And if it doesn't do that, the immune cell basically destroys that cell. I mean, it's a mechanism called P53. It's amazing how that works. And yet, what we have to do is understand that unless you have those immune cells to act as a police force to get rid of the cells that aren't behaving right, that could lead to cancer, you're never going to have the surveillance, the vigilance that you need to reduce your risk for cancer. What are those cells? Primarily, they're the NK cells. NK cells can be maintained with a highly varied natural foods diet, keeping your stress level low, in other words, keeping your stress hormone levels low, maintaining optimal levels of DHEA, and exercising regularly.
Okay. Well, Stephen, I could probably talk about this subject for the next 3 hours, but we're out of time. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Welcome.
Okay. So that was a lot of information, great information. I would love to sort of roundtable and get maybe the feedback from all of you about what really sort of struck you as he was speaking tonight, because he hit on a lot of important topics.
I think the one that stuck out to me the most is any of the things that we don't do to assist boosting on the repair and slowing down the damage process, all attributes to our aging faster.
Uh-huh. And most people don't know, Pam, that there's something they can do. I mean, we just kind of live life every day and think that, there's nothing that can be done, that, if I'm going to be subjected to cancer, it's a gene thing I've inherited and I'm going to get it and there's nothing I can do about it. And that's just not true. And I, had a discussion with somebody just this weekend about this very topic, because the person I was sitting across the table from said, isn't it sad that so many people are dying of cancer and there's nothing that we can do to prevent that? And I looked at her and I said, that is not true. It's simply not true. There's so much we can do. And, most people don't even have a clue where to begin or have a clue that we can.
Yep.
I mean,
I think he
starting with eliminating sugar would be a huge step.
He expressed many times as far as the detoxification in our body, and that's one way to begin, is where you're sharing is sugar, the aspect of, the elimination process. He, I didn't count how many times, but he many times said that the aloe vera is a helpmate for detoxification.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a great plant compound and has so many, many benefits to the human body. And, the detox part of that is so important because I don't know about all of you on this call, but I certainly had mercury fillings, and that's what they put in our mouths when we were younger. So anyone who's 40, 50, 60, I'm sure has mercury fillings. And, I have slowly had them removed, and he actually removed the last one about 6 months ago. So, every time you remove one of those, you release some of that mercury in your system. And every time you have fish, with the amount of mercury in water today, you're taking a risk as well. So keeping, aloe in your system daily will help protect us all from some of those toxic situations. It helps support the liver, because this liver is working harder than it ever has had to work in our entire life. I mean, we today have so many chemicals, environmental toxins. Food is so full of pesticide sprays. Animals are fed junk, and our body has to work so much harder. And we have to assist it with, detoxifying and getting rid of some of those chemicals. And so if we can take something as simple as aloe to do that, what a beautiful way to help kind of the stress that our system is under.
Yeah, even in our water supply, I mean, we don't know half of what we're drinking in our water is, from the lakes, or whether you have wells or not.
That's so true. And certainly Cheryl, who's worked in the water area, could probably tell us a lot more about that. But right on, Larry.
I also noticed that when he mentioned mercury, he was talking that he spoke that he eats a lot of fish, and he has at least 6 servings of fish a week.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that, because isn't there supposed to be a lot of mercury in the waters and the fish today?
Right. That's why he said that he tends to ingest lots of aloe for that reason, because it helps the liver clear that chemical out of his system. It helps with the detoxifying of those chemicals.
I see.
Anyone else? What else kind of connected with you as he was talking? The cardiovascular health, when I first read the book, The Metabolic Plan, 10 years ago, and I listened to this audio, because understand this audio is fairly old, because Stephen is living in Seattle, Washington now. He's no longer in Colorado. And I remember when I read the book that I have a lot of cardiovascular illness in my family. My dad's brothers, 2 of them died in their 40s. One was 46, one was 48. So, and my dad had cardiovascular illness as well. And so we kind of say, it runs in families, and yes, there's a genetic component, but we also have to understand that family, at least my dad's family, they were not huge fruit and vegetable eaters. They were meat, potato, bean type of eaters, and Grandma had desserts all the time at the house. And so that's how my dad grew up eating. And so their fruit and vegetable consumption wasn't the greatest. On my mom's side, they tended to garden more, and they had a lot more fruits and vegetables than my dad's side of the family. And so the cardiovascular problem is clearly connected to the amount of dairy compounds we're ingesting, dark leafy greens. He talked about the darker the fruit and vegetable, the better it is for our health. So, getting those high antioxidants in are critically important to cardiovascular health. And I remember talking to my dad about it years ago when I first got him involved and had him start taking extra, because I knew that his consumption of fruits and vegetables was limited. And I wanted to improve his cardiovascular health, and I knew that was one way to do it. Anything else?
I found that part interesting, the aspect where they spoke of when you're doing exercise and you're kind of turning the furnace on and raising the core body temperature, sort of like in the aspect of a fever, and that's what helps the metabolism to ignite within your body. I found that was interesting. to hear his sharing on that aspect too.
And the immune system, because your immune system, when you're exercising, you're training it to respond. Yes. Because if you're perspiring and you're turning the heat up internally, and you do that, 2-3 times a week, the body has that practice of, building up that heat and taking care of it, so that when we do get sick with a bug or a virus, the body's already in check. The immune system's going to be able to do the job better. So I think that also was an important part of what he was talking about here. And I used to say this all the time. I said, I exercise and I don't really get real sweaty. And it wasn't until I listened to Stephen talk about this that I understood that part of the reason was that, and exactly what he shared, and that's that, we need to sort of exercise to the point where we start to get short-winded maybe, and then calm the body down and slow down a little bit, and then pick back up again, and do that over and over again, where you're slowing down and you're moving faster, and you're slowing down and you're moving faster. I remember in the training for the half marathon that I did, talking with Stephen, and that is exactly what he had recommended that we do to get practice trained, was to run fast, then slow it down, slow the pace down, and run fast again and slow the pace down. And we did a lot of that till we built up to running the 13 miles. So really critically important, again, to exercise for the immune system. So, yeah, I like that point as well.
Well, the last part he talked about everything that's white. And if you go to the grocery store when you're shopping, you go down the bread aisle or cracker aisle or anything, everything is white. And if you're, going to the baked goods for your ingredients, 90% of the flour that's going to be there is going to be white, unbleached or whatever. So to try to find something that is either a gluten-free, non-dairy, and try to find more brown, it's kind of like an Easter egg hunt. When you find it, you're pretty joyful about it, and then you tell everybody else about it, or at least where to get it. So that was a good share that he did. I never seen brown toilet paper though, but that's another subject.
Right. That we're not going to get into over here.
Oh.
It kind of reminds me of a few years back. I worked with some Japanese fellows here, and they took us out to eat one time, and we were talking, and they says, "Why do Americans eat so much brown food?" And I couldn't understand what he meant, but when he explained it, was that Japanese, they eat a lot of white rice, clear broths, and green vegetables and everything, whereas the Americans have a lot of roasts and gravies and, like you said, brown food. So I think he was on the right subject,
Well, I mean, in this case, he's talking, certainly the food. What we do know is that not necessarily, Larry, that the white rice is not the best. The brown rice is better for you, and that is more of a whole grain. But when you talk about clear broths and eating clean vegetables, that kind of stuff, certainly that applies. When we talk about white toilet paper, white tissue paper that's bleached out, that does not apply because that's what's harmful. It's the chemicals that they use to whiten the product that is the issue, and that the body has to metabolize and take care of those chemicals because it ends up in the environment, and then we drink it in our water. And certainly Cheryl knows more about that than anyone.
Well, I'm not eating toilet paper, I'll tell you that. All
right. Well, it's like 6 minutes of 8, and I know that we're going to hop back on here in about 5 to 6 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the call off. Thank you so much for being on. I'm going to turn the recording off for this week.